of the Guilford School District, and Fran Wendelboe, who's a school board member of the Newfound Area School District. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to hear your experiences on the local school boards.
Okay, so congratulations, you are school board members. What I'd like to do is take a minute, introduce yourself if you would real quick.
Okay.
60 seconds, and then I'm going to ask you, if someone's interested in running for school board, what would you suggest their first step?
My name is Fran Wendelboe. I'm a former 14-year member of the New Hampshire House of Representatives. I served on the Finance Committee and on the Health and Human Services Committee. I also served in leadership. I've most recently been involved as a member of the school board. I got a call at 7 o'clock at night saying, "Did you realize that there's an open school board seat in your town tomorrow?" So I launched my campaign at 7 p.m. and was elected the next day with 108 votes. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall at the SAU office when they realized what had happened. So I'm currently on the school board, and I'm also a co-founder of the 603 Alliance. So I will talk a little bit about part of this, how to run for school board. About what services that we can also offer, and hopefully in conjunction with Freedom Works.
So I am Kyle Sanborn, and I am a Guilford School Board member. I was elected back in 2019 during a very polarizing time. I had actually run the year before and lost by, I think, 45 votes. So then I was already planning on running again the next year, and then that next September, the transgender policy was rolled out. So we kind of hit that head on, and I didn't desire to make that a campaign issue. I mean, who wants that type of, negative, impact coming back to their lives and, potentially in their children's lives. But again, like Jade was saying earlier, these are our children, so what wouldn't we do for them? The one thing that I would say about if you're considering running is make sure that your spouse is 100% in agreement with you.
That is good advice right there.
Is he in agreement with me?
There's a lot of people that are interested, that potentially might be wanting to run, but then, you have to make sure that you're going to be dedicated to the task. Unfortunately, right, so I get elected in March 2020, and the next week COVID happens. So it's been a kind of a shift in what we've had to deal with as school board members, and so for me personally, it was totally unexpected. Like I said, I had run the year before and had for many years thought about running, so I had already kind of had an idea of, why I was running, more for my children's education than anything else. One of the big things is continuing to teach calculus. There are districts out there that don't teach calculus anymore, and this new math, while it might work for some kids, definitely doesn't help our children that are excelling really meet their full potential. So there's so many more issues than just these cultural issues, which are important, but just educationally how it just seems that we're falling behind the rest of the world. And in Guilford, we're fortunate. We're a little bit above average in a lot of things. We're not, we haven't fallen off like a lot of these other school districts have, but there's still definitely a lot of work to be done.
So, Fran, this is being recorded, and this will get out to others, because I see that we have a very informed group here. But for the other individuals that are considering running for school board, or not knowing where to file or what area they would file for, walk us through some of those steps. If you're just starting to think about possibly running, what would those next steps be?
Well, we have two scenarios. In New Hampshire, you have most school board members are elected in March during the town meeting phase. And it differs whether you're Senate Bill 2 town or a traditional town for town meeting and elections. But also the cities in New Hampshire have their elections in November, when like the mayor races are. So in 5 weeks, there are people who are going to be standing for school board. We are going to pull together a very quick, short and sweet training for those people who are going to be facing election in November. That field is already set, and so we're going to offer resources for the last 5 weeks for them to plan out their campaign. Bear in mind that usually these are nonpartisan elections.
Yeah.
Traditionally, even though the political parties talk about wanting to elect more people, usually the spirit is willing and the flesh is weak for actually engaging. This year there is going to be more help coming from the Republican Party to help people, because it's become apparent how critical and vital it is having elected school board members that think like Republicans think versus the woke Democrats. The first thing I would say, if you are considering running for those March elections, because the field's already set for November, but if you're considering it and thinking about it, on the 603alliance.org, and we have brochures out there, we actually already have a training module that walks you through what it takes to run, what's the time constraints, where you can go for help, where you go to find out where you file, what paperwork you file, and so on. So I would advise you that that is your first step. The other step is don't reinvent the universe. If there's somebody else running on that ballot that you're compatible with as far as policy and your moral fiber, don't you do going through the database and figuring out who you need to contact and how many votes you need. If somebody's running for another position, whether it's trustee of the library or selectman, if you think alike, share the job of doing that database. You can get a voter database through the Republican Party. And while that helps, the people who vote in municipal elections are not the people who vote in elections electing state reps, for example. So you have to take that voter checklist, go to your town, ask to be able to look at the check-in for when people voted at the municipal election. And then you have to either manually or with your laptop, because you can get it printed or digital, check off. Because if you have limited funds, the first people that you want to focus on getting out to vote and getting your literature to are the people who normally always vote. Then your second tier and your second challenge is going to be get people who are Republican that normally always vote, but they just don't bother with the municipal elections. You have to motivate them to come out. And I've got to tell you, the iron is hot right now. People are so upset between CRT, masks, the potential of mandatory vaccines for the kids, and the girls' sports gender issue and bathroom issues. So parents are now paying attention, and where usually they would turn out when you threaten to cut sports, they are now turning out over these issues. So where we normally have no one there unless the budget is going to be cut for sports, now we're having 40 and 50 people show up to a small community school board meeting. So while the iron is hot, and these parents are starting to organize, but they just don't know where to go next. Again, don't reinvent the universe. There should be a number of school districts that are sent to a central location to share information. Dan Richards, with his efforts, is going with that Freedom for Our Kids website will help with that. I'm sure Freedom Works will help with that, because that's how we can get the whole state instead of just pockets. I'm sorry, I'm taking way too much time.
That's great advice, and I think it's important to know the first steps, because you got to get on these trainings. You do not want to miss out on this next opportunity in March, because that's right around the corner. So Kyle, if we have individuals that are looking at possibly running for school board, now that you're an elected school board member, what is something that you wish that you had prepared yourself ahead of time, or could have helped you prepare, be a better candidate during your campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, just the March elections, I couldn't agree more. You know, we have turnout that's so low. I mean, November, I think in our town we have almost 5,000 people voting. And then when I ran in March, which was a contentious year, right, there was 1,200 people. You know, I lost by 45 votes and then I won by 24. So, I mean, the margins are extremely thin and every vote really does matter. So you bringing somebody extra to the polls is going to make all the difference. You know, and for as far as what I wish that I might have done different, you know, it's hard to say because just not knowing, you know, definitely I think though, preparing myself is, you know, I wish I had, you know, read more of these RSAs ahead of time, you know, familiarize myself with the school policies ahead of time, so that way maybe I could have, you know, interacted with people when they ask these specific questions when you're knocking on doors. I say knocking on doors is probably the biggest thing that you can do in these small town elections. And Jade's husband, Matt, I mean, he knocked on hundreds of doors for me, and people that I didn't even know were knocking on doors for me. So I would say, you know, get your network of people, you know, really solid. You know, I'd say the biggest thing would be communicate with them more often. You know, I think there would times go by that, you know, weeks would go by and, you know, life catches up with you, right? I mean, I'm a father of 3, I work full time, you know, we all have busy lives, so it's like, here's campaign season, you know, in full swing, and it's like, you feel like, oh, how much more could I have done? You know, maybe that first year, and then gotten elected that first year, and then potentially being able to stop that policy from being implemented, because it did get implemented in Guilford. And then also too, realizing that, you know, while these battles are all going on, winning the elections is the war. You know, if we win the elections and win the seats, then, you know, it's really, it's on us then. You know, we don't have to have hundreds of people show up, you know, at our school board meetings and have the ACLU show up in opposition to you and tell you that you have a hateful face. You know, and it's those things though that you wear as a badge of honor, you know, because when you're being attacked by those people, then I must be, you know, again, having your convictions and then following through with them. You know, we don't run just so that we can be, you know, praised by the community. We run because we believe in something.
Yes.
And we need to hold true to those convictions and make sure that when you do get elected, you follow through with them.
Yeah.
But as far as running, definitely, you know, your network of people, you know, making sure that you know, like Fran, right, was saying, you know, get that voter checklist, find out who does vote in your elections, and target those people. It's not easy, it takes a lot of work, but, you know, if you have a network of people to help you, I think that really makes all the difference. And just one last thing, these are nonpartisan elections, right? But we know nothing in life is nonpartisan, right? Just because there's no R or D doesn't mean that it's a nonpartisan election. So, again, just quickly, so I had run the year before, so I wasn't running because of the transgender policy. I was running because of a host of other things. Well, I got branded as that candidate, and so the other side, they had to run a candidate against me, right? They knew I was running, but they couldn't let me run unopposed. So the filing period, which is at the end of January, the last day or whatever it was, this other person signs up, and the next day I look around and on the signs that are, you know, posted in the snowbanks, and at the bottom it says, paid for by Guilford Democrat Committee. These are not nonpartisan elections. So, you know, just every resource that you can possibly think of, you know, every person that you can call to help you. And it's, again, maybe they just make some phone calls to people that they know, that live in town, that share your values, that always vote in November, but never show up in March.
So Fran, and thank you for that advice. That's great words of wisdom there. How can individuals know the candidates that are coming up for election in November? What are you all doing to track these candidates to know that they really identify? Here I'm using the left words, right? Identify, but we have the same mindset, and they share our values. What's available for parents and community members?
Well, the first thing is, and that's why I think it's important, I mean, how many of you here are thinking about running for school board in March?
Woo!
All right.
Well, that's great. But I have to tell you, it takes two to tango. And it, depending on the size of your board, it takes a majority to be able to accomplish anything. If you have a seven-member board and you only have two like voices, it's an uphill battle. But at least your point of view is getting out there. And until this year, when my second person on my committee said, I think we should have a comment period from school board members on every agenda, because you'd sit there and you'd never get to say anything other than what happened to be discussed during the agenda. And of course, things that aren't on the agenda aren't brought up. And usually there's not a lot of debate. Usually there's no one there in the audience. And you're expected to rubber stamp everything. And I have to tell you, the policies, most of them come out in their language straight from the New Hampshire School Board Association, and it's rubber stamped. You are told to keep your mouth shut. You are not expected to answer, and it is even underscored by the fact that they tell you right on that you have no private voice. That once elected, we are a body of the school board, and what the majority votes is the position of this school board. And I said, thank you very much. I will recognize that I can't change what the vote was, but that doesn't mean I have to agree with it or that I can't speak against it. They hate me. Matter of fact, I had to go to the Attorney General's office and the Secretary of State's office to get sworn in because they kept wanting to delay when I would be sworn in. And I just took the reins in my own hand, and they were unconnected reins. And so you have to realize, and finally, about 2 meetings ago, I spoke up because somebody got up and said, why do you never answer us? We email you and we ask questions and we look at your stone faces and you never answer us at school board meetings. Well, that's because of that theory that you can only speak as a board. So board members are hesitant to email you back if you send an email or you send a letter. They're hesitant, certainly to call. Even I'm hesitant to make a phone call or talk on the phone because you can't prove that you didn't say something out of line, and then you have to worry about the ones who don't agree with you going after you with an ethics complaint. So I always ask people, send me a short email and I'll respond. And I told them I will always reply to you. But in our bylaws, it says that we don't have to respond to you and that you can only bring up the subject that's on the agenda. So people that are attending school board meetings need to understand the rules and why. And like I said, the iron is hot. People are starting to turn out because of these other issues. And while they're there, they're hearing all these other agenda items that are being voted on. They're going, whoa. And I try to take advantage of that at every meeting. I'll ask this random question. Oh, by the way, I don't think I've ever had the curriculum shared with us. Where can I find the exact in-detail curriculum? And then you got the people in the audience going, oh, I never thought about that. And then I said, and I also see in the report of one of the schools, the summer training that they did. And can you tell me what is in this particular program? There's a Choose Love program that a lot of the schools are using that I have real concerns about the Choose Love and the direction it's going in. So an informed parents group is vital, and we need to take advantage of that now that they are turning out.
Okay. We have a few minutes. Do you have any final words of wisdom you'd like to leave with the group?
Yeah, just to keep going on what Fran was saying, we really need the parents in our communities to band together. You know, there are so many, there's so much curriculum, right? Fran and I couldn't possibly go and read through all of this on our own, right? It's going to take a whole village to do this. And if each parent, if you're reading what your kid is being sent home with, now a lot of times, right, kid comes home first week of school and here's the syllabus and you don't really look at it. Look at it. Look at what the books that are recommended on there, and just a quick DuckDuckGo search will tell you if there's, hey, is there any controversy with these types of books? or a particular author, and then we can drill down further. Because again, you know, we're part-time, you know, and I wish I had more time to commit to it. But again, raising 3 kids and working a full-time job, we're doing the best that we can. Again, you got to look at the big picture, right? We got to win elections because again, if you're in the minority, you're not going to be able to get anything done. So it's just the last little piece of information. Ask, because the information is not always going to be brought to you. You know, when I first got on, again, COVID happened, and so, you know, we were going throughout that summer, and I really didn't know that I should have had a more of a hands-on approach. You know, so I was kind of just sitting back and waiting for, you know, a reopening plan to be presented to me, and it wasn't until it was the Friday before our Monday meeting, and they were going for, you know, masks. And I said, wait a minute, this isn't what my conversations have been for the past 3 months. And all of a sudden, but again, I didn't pursue it. So ask, keep asking, and if they tell you no, just keep asking. And then if you have to, you can file a 91A and get the information, because this is all public information. The curriculum is not private. Just because you don't have a kid in that class does not mean you are not entitled to it. Your taxes pay for that curriculum. So ask and keep asking.
That's great words of wisdom. I wanted to give the floor for 2 minutes to Michael Kehoe. He is the New Hampshire